Hi, I'm Cece, and I am ready to get this motherfucker out of my life. Okay, so step one to that is to get the last endings. I mean, that's really all the steps. Get the last endings. So, I think the rest of them have to do with her? Question mark? Pretty sure. I think I exhausted all of the options with Jack. So, now we're gonna talk to Ellen and see what crazy things she has to say and do to me. She sat there, face flushed with excitement, eyes hazy and starstruck. This is right after Jack was talking to her and got all up in her face, was like, basically was like, fuck off. And she was just like, oh my God, I love him. I was gripped by heartache, but I couldn't bear to let things end like this. It took two people to have an affair, and I had to hear a reason from both of them. I had to know why. I took a deep breath, steadying myself to speak. My throat had constricted, and I swallowed a building lump of grief-stricken pain. Excuse me. She was startled, collecting herself, and standing up slowly. When I approached her, her eyes flicked to my face, surprise melting into recognition. She knew who I was. Oh. She muttered a soft, embarrassed sound. Oh no. You saw all that, didn't you? Yes. My voice was hoarse. I knew I was on the verge of tears, but I refused to back down. You're sleeping with my husband. She blinked. She hadn't expected the accusation. That probably looked terrible from your perspective. But this has all been a huge misunderstanding. Yeah, they're not sleeping together. Yet. They're just sleeping with dead people next to each other? Probably. Because this game is disgusting. Guess let's just be mean. Just, typical game plan. She shrunk back from me as though frightened. Please, just hear me out. Yeah. Her tone grew imploring and desperate. You don't have to believe me, but you deserve to know what really happened. I didn't want to talk. I hardly trusted myself to speak without screaming. But I did want to know. It wouldn't fix anything, but it would put my mind at ease. Let me explain. Reluctantly, I nodded. It still didn't seem real. She cleared her throat. Well, I'm Ellen. Hello, Ellen. I'm a grad student in the psych department. And I know you're Cece. Oh, wow. I'm a celebrity. She hesitated. Dr. Buchanan keeps a picture of you on his desk. It hurt worse somehow than if he didn't. It hurt to think that he still loved me, and that love wasn't enough to keep him from doing something like this. He's mentioned you before. She stiffened at the words, and I realized I hadn't managed to keep the accusatory tone out of my voice. You've taken at least one of his classes. He said you were bright. He said that? The resentment must have shown on my face. I'm sorry. That was insensitive. A lot of us in the department really look up to him. I'm sure you do. Me, especially. Are you saying that's what I saw? You were just fishing for some respect or praise? No. That's not it at all. She wants in on the body humping. That's all. I wanted to get to know him better. Dr. Buchanan is pretty closed off. He doesn't even let us use his first name unless we're doing our research projects with him. You said you wanted to be a part of something, and he invited you over. So what? Are there other people involved? Are all of his students trying to get into bed with him? Wait. Her head tilted curiously as she stared at me. Wait, you really think... She touched a hand to her chin thoughtfully. You said you were going to explain. I know. And I will. She lowered her voice. I think I have something that belongs to you. I felt sick. Jack was giving my things to his conquests? Conquests. That's a fun word. My mind was reeling, trying to remember if I was missing anything important, but I hadn't noticed. I don't feel right keeping it. It felt weird accepting it in the first place, but it seemed okay. I never thought... I didn't urge her to continue. I didn't know that I had it in me to talk anymore. I'd like to have it back. Don't even know what it is. Part of me wanted to let her keep it, unwilling to touch anything he'd just given away without any thought of my feelings, but I wanted closure. If I mourned now, it would make the inevitable conversation with Jack easier later. She nodded and started walking, and I followed numbly. I'm just parked a little ways away. She's like, oh, sorry, my puppy ran away, and I have candy in my car, so you should come in over here because I need help moving my furniture. Like, come on. What are we doing? Somebody says they have something in the car. Cool, I'll wait right here. You go ahead and bring it out, and we're going to go to a bright lit area before you even think. I'm going to go over to this coffee shop with people in it. You can bring it over there. I'm not going to your damn car. I really am sorry about all of this. Sure. I know this must be a little stressful, but I don't want to make it worse for you. I honestly never thought I'd be in this position. I'm really sorry if I caused you a lot of trouble. Sure. I was only half listening to her. It didn't really matter to me what she said anymore. Even if she didn't want to admit it, I'd seen and heard enough. Jack would have to tell me the rest himself. Ellen's car wasn't far away. She unlocked it, opening the door on the driver's side. My breath caught in my throat when I heard something clatter on the concrete, shining in the low light. It looked like jewelry. Oh, shoot. Ellen got back out and closed the door a little ways. Sorry, I think it's still okay. I crouched down and reached for it. Now she's gonna bonk us over the head. My fingers closed around cold metal. And there it is. The car door slammed into my head. I let out a pained cry and lost my balance, sprawling on my side. I felt nauseous and dizzy, struggling to even sit up. My forehead was filled with a painful heat. I pressed a shaking hand to my face and felt where the skin had split. Blood dribbled over the ridge of my brow, and I blinked heavy, red drops out of my eyes. A hand tangled in my hair, dragging me up to my knees. Through my blurring vision, I saw a dimpled crease in the surface of the car door. Damn, she hit me. Either she hit me very hard, or this car is a piece of shit. Right before, it was bashed against my head again. I couldn't keep my eyes open, but the last thing I saw was Ellen's shoes. I woke slowly, a dull ache pulsing in the front of my skull. The bright light filling the room made it ebb into a stabbing headache. I tried to cover my eyes, but I couldn't move my hands. I could hardly move at all. Every time I twisted my body, I felt something hard and metallic digging into my skin. I inhaled sharply when I realized I was naked. Of course I am. Of course I am. Why wouldn't I be naked? That's just standard kidnapping practice. Oh, good. Ellen was standing in front of me, a relieved smile on her face. As I lifted my head and looked around, I saw that I was in a bedroom. Metal crisscrossed over my skin in a grid pattern, rigid and unbending. I was in a cage, and my head was sticking out of a jagged hole cut into the door. What? She just built a cage? She just had this cage. She's had this ready to go. Just... Okay. I was starting to get a little worried. You were out for a while. What's going on? Why am I naked? Why am I in a cage? Please don't get upset. We didn't get to finish talking earlier, and you were getting a little antsy, that's all. And you're naked because dogs don't need clothes. Okay. I was shaking. I didn't understand what was going on. You lied to me. A lie of omission is hardly a lie. It's still a lie, though. Like, a lie of omission is still a lie. I didn't say you lied to me a lot. I said you lied to me. I really thought you'd be used to it, considering your husband does it all the time. Oh, this bitch. What do you mean? We'll get to that later. This was all a little impulsive on my part, so I had to improvise. I just used whatever I had lying around to tie your wrists together. A few cords, a couple zip ties, a lot of tape. 'Cause that's really, I'm like the Hulk. I would have ripped out of the cords and the zip ties, so I'm glad she used all three. 'Cause I would have been out of there in 2 seconds. But I think it's going to work out. You bitch! What the fuck is wrong with you? What makes you think doing something like this is okay? You have no right. She snatched a small cylindrical tube from her desk and stomped over to me, squeezing the tab on top of it. Something sprayed out onto my face. Does she mace me? While I'm stuck in this cage? But you see, it's the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, just don't do it. Just don't do it. I'm sorry. If you are blonde-haired and blue-eyed, I'm going to need you to, change something. Dye your hair, maybe wear color contacts, do something else, because being blonde-haired, blue-eyed makes you an evil bitch. I don't make the rules. That's just been proven by science. I choked on a scream, searing pain prickling the inside of my throat when I inhaled. It felt like there were heated needles in my eyes and nose, fire all the way down to the pit of my stomach. I writhed, desperately trying to rub at my face, but I couldn't turn my body, the metal bars of the dog kennel barely allowing me to move. Tears and snot dripped down my chin, and I wheezed, trying to get air into my aching lungs. Ellen's fist was wrapped tightly around the tube, the corner of her lips twitching. She spoke in a low growl, staring at me. Bad dog. The pain came in waves, every inhale bringing more stinging particles into my airway. I could barely see anything, vision blurred by tears and stinging liquid as it dried to my face. I squeezed my eyes shut, but it didn't help. Through the agony, I thought I heard Ellen breathing heavy too, like she was trying to calm down. I don't like doing things like that. She was using her normal, subdued tone of voice again, but I heard an unstable tremble that I hadn't noticed before. I really, really don't. But I will if I have to. I felt like I lay there panting and whimpering in agony forever. Ellen just watched, talking occasionally with such nonchalance that we could have been discussing the weather. It's not complicated, okay? It's very simple. You're going to be good and obedient and do what I ask you, or bad things will happen to you. And neither of us will like that. I'm sure you won't, Ellen. I'm sure you won't. Ellen nodded to herself, seemingly satisfied with her handiwork. She set the little tube back down on the desk. She breathed in and held it for a moment, collecting herself before she continued speaking. I want to get closer to Dr. Buchanan. I opened my mouth to protest, and she cut me off, harshly. Would you open your eyes and think critically for a minute? Your husband isn't having an affair, and he isn't giving your stuff away. That ring was just some cheap trash I got to trick you. Was this planned? Was she planning on kidnapping me at some point? Why would she have just had the ring in the cage available? I wonder if that's why she was the one down in the basement at the very beginning. When, you go down and you're like, oh my God, you're cheating on me. And then, she's fucking dead as shit. I wonder if she was planning on, kidnapping me to prove something to Jack. And he found out. And he was just like, Bitch! That's my job. I'm the only one that's allowed to torture and kill my wife. He hasn't slept with me or any of his students. Ellen paused, letting the words sink in. I didn't know if I could believe her. I didn't know if I should. But if she really was telling the truth, I closed my eyes and lowered my head, tears burning at the corners of my eyes. It was a relief. My heart felt so much lighter. Of course Jack wouldn't betray me like that. I wanted to go home and throw my arms around him and cuddle up beside him. No, you don't. But I looked up into Ellen's impatient stare and knew that wasn't an option. He's still doing something you'd find distasteful. I'm not sure distasteful is the right word. It's a little mild for what I feel about it. I thought you must know about it by now, but it's so strange. It's like he's protecting you. I'll figure it out. You're the key to understanding him. And that's all I want, just to understand. This isn't the right way to understand someone. She slammed her hand down the side of the cage and I winced. Oh, so you're an expert, huh? You could just tell me all about how much you know and understand about your husband? You know, the one you followed into town to make sure he wasn't having an affair? My face heated with shame. I didn't know. Exactly, you didn't know. There's a whole side of him you know nothing about. But you're still important to him. Even when you're completely clueless, there are things in your history and your behavior you can tell me. She backed off, still glaring at me. I'm going to get what I want, whether you want to cooperate or not. She seemed to remember something suddenly. Shoot. I still need to finish grading. We'll talk again when I'm done. Yep, that's what's important right now. Grading. Get your papers done, girl. She went back to her desk and took something from it. I saw her come back with a plastic dog bowl, setting it down in front of my face. There was a muffin inside. I looked up at her questioningly and she shrugged. Dog food is a little expensive. You're going to have to eat my leftovers. Fuck you and your muffin. I didn't move. I didn't trust her, and I had more dignity than to eat out of a dog bowl. Ellen waited a couple minutes before she let out a tired sigh and took the bowl away. Fine. Guess you'll go hungry. She dumped the muffin into the trash and slammed the bowl down on her desk, making me flinch. She sat down and started messing with some papers, ignoring me. Are we like in a dorm or something? This is a very tiny room. We have to be in like a dorm or an apartment or something. How? How is she planning on keeping me locked up in this cage, quietly, without anybody hearing? Time passed quietly, with little more than the occasional scratching of pen over paper or sounds of typing. Ellen crossed and uncrossed her legs, sighing from time to time. Left to my own thoughts for a while, I had time to think about everything that had happened. Even though I was overjoyed that I'd been wrong about Jack, and a little guilty, I now had to deal with something worse. Let's talk to her. Let's see if we can bother her a little bit more. What are you working on? Putting in grades. She said it absently, like she wasn't really paying attention. I teach a few undergraduate classes, and midterms just went by. It's kind of enjoyable. You like teaching? I do. It's rewarding. This might surprise you, but I'm generally patient in the classroom. I don't get frustrated with my students easily. That does surprise me, because so far you've just been an asshole. She glanced over her shoulder at me briefly, looking irritated. Incidentally, you're not one of my students. I'm busy right now. I frowned, but her computer let out a chime and she turned away. Suddenly, Ellen froze. I didn't hear her typing or writing. Oh. Oh no. No. She started muttering to herself, sounding upset. Then she stood from her desk and walked over to me. Ellen? I called her name with uncertainty. I told Dr. Buchanan that something came up and I wouldn't be able to go see him. I think I made him mad. Good. You shouldn't be meeting with him anyways. Ellen kicked me hard in the side of the head. I cried out in pain, wincing as she grasped me by the hair and made me look up at her, my neck bent at a painful angle. I'm getting really sick of your attitude. People typically do. Attitude? I mocked her tone angrily. He's my husband. You have no right to be sneaking around with him behind my back. Your husband sneaks around all the time, in your own fucking house. You're just living in blissful ignorance. My heart sank. You said he wasn't having an affair. She touched a finger to her lips coyly. Oh, did I say that? I guess that's partially true. Isn't it an affair if the other party doesn't even give consent? He wouldn't. I wanted to sound certain, but my voice was shaky. Was this the lie, or had she been lying from the beginning? I had no way of knowing for certain. He would never do something like that. I know my husband. Ellen tugged on my hair harder and I winced, pain flaring up in my scalp. She crouched down so we were eye level with each other. No, you don't. And the sooner you accept that, the better. Then she released me, and I let out a relieved breath, resting my cheek against the floor to soothe my aching neck. Ellen rummaged through her desk drawers frantically. I heard things clattering around, and a few pens fell to the floor. She let out a shaky laugh when she found what she was looking for. I saw a flash of metal as she held it up before it disappeared out of my line of sight again. I heard a quiet, high-pitched chirping. I'm not a sadist or anything, really. I just find catharsis is easy through other people. Seeing somebody else suffer makes me more comfortable because it's not me, you know? No, I don't know, because I'm not a crazy person. She turned around and I saw she was holding a pair of long, pointed tweezers. If she puts those... Okay. A small black insect twitched between the metal clamps. I just need you to hold still for a little bit, okay? Don't move. Stay. Be a good dog. She took a step closer to me. I didn't know what was going to happen, and I didn't think I was going to like it. Ellen crouched down, and with more force than I expected, her palm fell across the side of my head. She forced me to turn to the side, my cheek rubbing into the carpet. I watched the tweezers and the insect coming closer and started to squirm nervously. What are you doing? She paused, hand hovering over me, the insect squirming inches from my face. I'm going to ask you a few questions. Simple things, don't worry. Just answer me honestly. She giggled quietly like she was trying not to laugh. Oh, and I'm going to put this cricket in your ear. Why? That's such a weird thing to do to somebody else. A cricket? That's so fucking, like... How do you even come up with things like this? In? It took a moment for the words to completely register. I didn't want to believe I heard her correctly. Wait, I don't... Don't what? Don't want it? Don't think you can tolerate it? With surprising gentleness, she stroked my hair. The human mind is incredible. People can grow accustomed to the most horrendous of circumstance. Sometimes you have to. Then she braced her palm flat against the side of my head to hold me still. This is one of those times. Please don't. My throat seized up and my voice was paralyzed when I felt her press the cricket against my cheek. It was still alive, legs and antennae flailing. She dragged it over my skin so I could feel it moving. Ugh. I've been meaning to ask you about Dr. Buchanan. She slid the cricket along my face and dangled it above my ear. You seem to have a relatively stable marriage. Are you sexually intimate with each other? Was this some kind of test? Would she leave me alone if I told her what she wanted to hear? I didn't feel comfortable answering her, but she made her own assumptions from my silence. So how is it? Does he expect you to take the lead, or do you bend over for him? I mean, just knowing what we know, it's probably the latter. Do you ever feel... Oh. Ugh. Or maybe he doesn't really enjoy it. It's all brief and passionless, and it makes you feel like you're doing something wrong. As if your marriage is unraveling before your eyes because he's found something he likes to fuck more than you. I frowned tightly. She was just trying to get a reaction out of me. Even if she was telling the truth, Jack wasn't that shallow. It would take more than that for him to fall out of love. Wouldn't it? Ellen paused only for a moment before she started to slide the cricket into my ear. She did it agonizingly slowly, and I felt its spindly legs scrambling against the passage, tickling the inside of my ear. I shuddered and tried to move. In anger, she brought her knee down on my neck, her legs straddling my head. Stay. Her tone implied that I wouldn't be getting another warning. God, she's awful. She pushed the cricket in deeper. It started to thrash, its antenna twitching and its legs flailing wildly as it tried to dislodge itself from the tweezers. I felt it squirming go deeper and deeper inside of my head. Its movements made the low-pitched buzzing sound that I felt as much as I heard unbelievably loud. Even when it was still, it was making this awful chittering noise, a loud clicking that was painful to listen to. This is so fucking weird. This is so weird. Who thinks of doing something like this? Where did this idea even come from? I didn't realize she was speaking for a minute. I noticed she was moving at first, squirming in what I mistook for discomfort. Her hips were moving just a little. Her skirt was riding up on her legs, and I can see her underpants. Okay. I couldn't tell for sure, but the little breathy sound she was making. Was she getting off on this? Of course she was, because what's not sexy about shoving a live cricket into somebody else's ear? I know I said I was going to ask you things, but I changed my mind. Ellen bit her lower lip, muffling a shaky sigh. I want to talk, so just listen for a minute. Sometimes I fantasize about your husband. No. Her hand was trembling. The tweezers shook in her grip. I felt the cricket bump against the walls of my ear canal, carapace grinding against the soft, delicate tissue. I know he's married, and I know he loves you. But what if, you know? What if he would hold me down like this and... She kept moving it in further, the noises it made growing louder. Its frantic fluttering became deafening and painful as it hit the soft wall of my eardrum. Held you down and put a cricket in your ear? I don't understand. I don't get it. Fuck you, bitch. I couldn't take it anymore. I thrashed my body under Ellen, trying to throw her off of me. She was startled only for a moment before her eyes narrowed. Bad dog. Fuck off. She readjusted herself quickly, shifting all of her weight onto the knee pressed into my neck. I winced and wriggled helplessly, trying to free my limbs from the cage, but there wasn't enough room to move. Her fingers were trembling worse than before. Her grip slipped in the struggle, and I felt the cricket come loose from the tweezers, buzzing wildly right next to my eardrum as it tried to find a way out. Oh, God. She wrapped her fist around the tweezers and jammed the pointed end into my ear, scraping the soft tissue of my inner ear on the way down. The cricket made a horrible noise when she speared its body. The pointed end of the tweezers pierced my eardrum and pain erupted in my head. I felt soft flesh tearing apart and screamed, writhing in pain. Ellen refused to let me go, yanking the tweezers back violently. I saw bits of red muscle and gristle coating the tips. I swear to God, if she puts it anywhere near her mouth. I am going to have a BF. Blood spattered over my cheeks and her fingers. The dying cricket spasmed in its death throes on the wound. She stabbed me again, drove the tweezers point down into my ear, and forced them through my flesh, grinding them into my head. I felt the metal squelch through my flesh and blood bubbled up in my ear, making every sound muffled and distant. She wasn't saying anything, but I doubt I would have heard it anyways. The pain was too much. My eyelids fluttered and my vision darkened. I hoped I would pass out soon. Suddenly, she stopped. The tweezers fell and scattered blood on the carpet. One bloodied hand rose to cover her mouth, and her eyes were open wide with shock. My head was throbbing, and I could barely hear anything over my own heartbeat and something like pulsing white noise. Dimly, I thought I could make out the words tumbling from her lips in a panic. Oh no. Oh God, I didn't mean... What am I going to tell Dr. Buchanan? And not a goddamn thing you can tell him that's going to save your ass, Ellen. You're good as done. The last thing I saw were tears spilling from her eyes. Oh yes, poor Ellen. So I wonder what happens if I made all the same choices, but now we're just going to sit still instead of struggling and see if it leads to a different violent death or the same violent death. I was shivering, the sensation of the cricket's vibrating movements unpleasant, but I didn't want to aggravate her further. She pushed against my eardrum with the cricket, poking and prodding, watching me fight not to squirm. You have good self-control. I was surprised to receive praise, even more so that she sounded like she meant it. I thought you might be a little impulsive, but it took time for you to get desperate enough to follow Dr. Buchanan. I bet he appreciates that about you. I feel that Jack is entitled to his secrets. There was a moment of complete stillness and silence before she pulled the cricket out of my ear, and I felt I could breathe again. I think I'm beginning to understand. She sounded wistful, almost sad. Her weight lifted from my neck and she stood up, the cricket still grasped between the tweezers. She turned away to go back to her desk. I let out a relieved sigh, catching my breath. It was over. Ellen left the room for a while. I heard drawers opening and silverware clattering together. Food sizzled on the stove. My stomach tightened painfully. I didn't realize how hungry I was until after I smelled something cooking. Would she be angry if I asked for food? Don't want her fucking food. Nah. Better not to risk it. I rested my head against the floor and tried to relax. I didn't realize how late it was until dinner was over. After cleaning up, Ellen turned most of the lights off except for a little lamp on her bedside table. You should get some sleep. I'm going to wake you up early tomorrow. I was nervous about sleeping with her in the room, but it was hard to keep my eyes open. Ellen sat up in bed with papers spread out around her and a textbook open in front of her. She looked pensive, like she knew something was wrong but didn't know how to fix it. What could possibly be wrong with this scenario? I thought I might have seen Jack make the same expression as he graded papers beside me, a little wistful and lonely. Like he didn't realize I was right beside him. Like it didn't matter anyway. Emotionally and physically exhausted, I found myself nodding off. The first thing I noticed was something touching me. I woke slowly to the sensation of a hand moving over my skin, smoothing down my back. I groaned and rolled over, trying to bury my face in the blankets. Are we out of the cage? The same gentle touch brushed my hair out of my face. Let me sleep in, Jack. The hand stilled. Then I heard a soft, feminine laughter. I opened my eyes and Ellen was sitting on the floor next to me, watching me intently. Good morning. Did you sleep well? When she reached out to touch me again, I flinched, shifting out of her reach. Although my hands and feet were still bound, my body wasn't restricted by the cage anymore. I wriggled away from her deeper into the nest of blankets draped around me, but she scooted closer and threw them off, exposing my skin. I wanted to apologize for yesterday. I don't usually fly off the handle like that. Okay. It's very uncharacteristic of me to panic. She sounded like she genuinely felt bad about it. And I wondered why kidnapping me in the first place didn't warrant some kind of acknowledgement. Thank you. Like, cool, you lost your cool yesterday when you were yelling at me while I'm in the cage, but, like, you've kidnapped me. So, like, what does it matter? But today's going to be different. I had a good night's rest and thought things over, and I'm ready to approach this again. All you have to do is cooperate. I will not be doing that. You're still not getting out of what I have planned today. I want you to hold still for me. I wasn't sure what that was supposed to mean. She seized me by the hair and pushed my face into the carpet, climbing onto my back to keep me pinned. I felt something sharp prick the side of my neck, and I cried out in pain. Ugh, what did she do? She drugged me? She climbed off of me, and I glanced up, seeing a syringe in her hand. What was in that needle? She set it down on her desk, then crossed her arms over her chest, waiting for something. Just a little something I scavenged from Dr. Buchanan's office. Don't worry, it's just a paralytic. That's it, that's all. He's been working hard to find something that can be used repeatedly without too many adverse side effects. Just for you. Aww. My heartbeat quickened in fear. What do you mean? You can't be this dense. Do I need to spell it out for you? Your husband is fucking corpses. This is true. My mouth went dry and my heart stopped. That couldn't be true. She said so many questionable things, but this? Was this really the truth? Arguably, that's not the worst part. He's killing people, too. Okay, no, I see the point. She's got a point there. That is considerably worse than the second part. He's dragged them home and had his way with their lifeless bodies, and then he cuts them up to save for later until they're too rotted to keep. I realized as she was speaking that I could move less and less. It was becoming difficult to keep my head raised off the ground. Ellen noticed my struggles to hold her gaze and walked over to me, turning me onto my back with little resistance. I felt vulnerable and exposed as she lifted my arms over my head and pulled my legs out straight. The binding she used on my wrists and ankles had rubbed my skin raw. I know you don't want to believe me, but this is the one thing I need you to accept. I need you to know, because then you can help me understand. I didn't know that I fully believed her, but I was disgusted. If he was doing something like that, why would you want to understand him? Wouldn't you? No. She almost sounded disappointed, like she was expecting me to sympathize. Will not be me. She took one of my hands, turning it over so she can run her fingertips over my palm. I inhaled shakily when I saw she'd traded the syringe for a small, slender knife, the kind someone might use for sculpting. She grasped the handle tightly and held it over the middle of my palm. You love him, don't you? Hysteria was creeping into her voice. Of course I do. I was frightened by the tremor I felt in her hand, the blade skittering over the skin of my palm as she struggled to hold it steady. But it was hard to speak with conviction when my tongue felt so heavy and all my words slurred together. It didn't seem to matter anyway. Ellen's gaze was dismissive, and I knew she was doubting me. She raised the knife and brought it down into my palm with a sickening, crunching squelch, flesh tearing and blood spurting from the wound. Pain shot all the way up my arm, and my hand felt like it was burning. Her unsteadiness made her fumble with the blade, widening the wound as the knife grazed bone. The scream I let out was weak, half trapped in my throat, little more than a miserable, pained groan. Ellen yanked the knife back, taking bits of flesh with her. The wound throbbed in time with my pounding heartbeat. Dr. Buchanan emailed me again late last night. He told me to stop contacting him and consider transferring to another university. Do you understand? This is my last chance. You have to tell me something useful now, because I'm really sure that this is the end. This is it. Killing his wife, the one person that he has any semblance of affection for, is absolutely the way to get him to like you. It's a great plan. It's good thinking. She repositioned the blade above the soft pad of my index finger. This isn't going to help you understand him. You should think about what he said. I think that one. You should think about what he said. And fuck off. She sunk the blade into my finger, driving it all the way through my flesh. She hit the underside of my nail and forced it to arch upwards, tearing it out of the nail bed. Jesus! Blood oozed out of the corners. I choked on a scream, tears welling up in my eyes at the piercing pain. She watched me, her expression frustrated, as if this wasn't enough for her. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. Her gaze was fixed on my bloodied hand, though it gradually shifted to my face. She got to her feet quickly and left the room. I heard loud clanging in the kitchen, cupboards being opened and slammed shut, and silverware scraping together. It sounded like she was looking for something. I tried desperately to move my body, but couldn't even flex my fingers. Ellen didn't let me anguish over it long. She was back a moment later, holding a much larger, serrated knife in her hand. I've never killed someone before, but Dr. Buchanan told me I should try. That's awesome advice. Such great advice. He said that the only way to really understand something like this is to do it for yourself. I was so scared before, but I've known all along what I was supposed to do. She took a step closer, the knife clutched in a shaking, white-knuckle grip at her side. I have to do what he does. I have to kill you, and then I have to... Okay, please don't do that. You really don't want to do this. I tried to reason with her. She swallowed nervously. I don't. But I'm willing to do a lot of unpleasant things for Dr. Buchanan. She was even closer now, kneeling by my legs. I have to take pictures when I'm done, or he'll never believe me. Again. Kidnapping, torturing, and murdering the one person he has any sort of positive feelings for. And then doing that shit and taking pictures, not gonna be the end she thinks it's gonna be. He thinks I'm a coward. Hesitantly, she set the serrated teeth of a knife over the meat of my thigh, just resting it there. She was shaking, but she was still determined to do this. I saw her try to dig the knife in, pushing it into my skin, but it didn't sink very far. The knife wasn't meant for cutting meat at all. I kind of wanted to keep you. I was surprised to hear her say it, softly, almost shyly. Despite the circumstances, I was starting to see things about you that were endearing to me. Things that Dr. Buchanan gets to see all the time. But that wouldn't work. She pushed harder. I felt the serrated edge slice into me as she began to drag it over my skin, the sawing motions helping the blade tear through flesh and muscle. It was slow and agonizing, fear and pain coursing through me as I watched her force the knife deeper. I felt weak. I couldn't fight anymore. My head drooped down and my exhausted body shuddered. Had the room been this cold before? Even breathing makes me tired. Ellen froze and stared at me, eyes widening. She touched my face and her hand was so warm it almost felt like she was burning. I was breaking out in a cold sweat. Oh. Oh no, you've lost too much blood. What do you mean, oh no? That was the whole point. She didn't move, content to watch me bleed out. She looked at my wounds, frowning nervously. I couldn't keep my eyes open. At least I wouldn't have to endure whatever else she had in mind. I guess this is what I wanted, isn't it? Sure was, Ellen. Sure was. So I thought that Ellen's endings would have been tied in with Jack's endings. But apparently they are two different things. And she's got a bunch of endings. And he still has 3 left. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. We're gonna get through this, and it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. It doesn't matter that I have 9 endings left with these people who like to fuck dead people and put crickets in other people's ears. It's fine. Well, we're getting closer and closer, so I hope I'll see you next time, and it's okay, I understand if I don't. Take care of yourself.